Hi, I'm Dan Costa, editor-in-chief of PCMag.com, and welcome to Fast Forward, conversations about work, home, and life in our accelerated age. My guest this week is Chris Lawrence, Vice President of the Mozilla Leadership Network, and we are not in PCMag Labs. If you hear hammering, if you hear people talking, it's because we are in the glass room in Soho here in New York City, and we're going to talk about digital privacy, we're going to talk about the future and the health of the internet, and we're going to talk about what you personally use to keep yourself safe while you're traveling. But first, we've got to explain why we are here in this glass room. It looks like we're in an Apple store. We are not, nothing is being sold here.
Nope.
Just explain what the Glass House is and sort of what the mission is behind it.
Sure. Baratunde Thurston actually said about this space that if the show Black Mirror had a storefront, this would be the storefront. So, and I think what he was talking about was this sort of dystopian view of the future, these sort of cautionary tales, and this is where this all comes to life. And so Mozilla is really doing this because we want to spark those kind of conversations. We want people to think about the implications of their digital choices, about where their data goes, about who's in control of that. But these are sometimes very complicated issues. They don't really land with folks that easily. So things like this, where you can, an object or an art that's provocative, that's satirical, that's funny, lets people engage with the content. So something like right over here where you could read an article about LinkedIn losing 1 million passwords or having them hacked, but to actually sit there and rifle through a book, it's a lot creepier and disturbing experience than reading a TechCrunch article.
And you can, it's easier to search for it online, but you can actually find your password if it was leaked in one of those bound books. So for those of us that aren't watching in video and are listening only on audio, we're in a vast white room, looks like a gallery space, looks like an art opening, with a variety of installations created by different artists that basically highlight one particular facet of living in our digital world. We're actually standing over a 3D printed model of Mark Zuckerberg's house, under glass. And the card explains that Mark Zuckerberg bought all these houses around him and basically emptied them out so that he could have privacy. At the same time, we're all living in a world with very little privacy, and you could actually find a Google map of his region and of his home and create a 3D model of it. So just one of the examples of the digital being made physical in this space. Do you have any other exhibits that you think are really neat?
A bunch of them, actually. This one over here, which is a knockoff pair of Kanye West sneakers. Mm-hmm. And what the curators did to put that piece together was they just had a bot that shopped on the dark web, and then they would get, I think, a thing a week, so to speak. Yeah. And so the kind of strange things that would show up at their office, it's brave to do in terms of who might be tracking those. So this one was one that just really captured their fancy. So it was basically a bootleg pair of Kanye sneakers. So that the kind of random stuff that they brought in, and it kind of told you about what was out there and about what you can find and what can be duplicated. And
it's also sort of counter expectations. You hear dark web and you hear a bot's making automated purchases, you think, oh, you're going to get drugs, you're going to get guns, you're going to hire a hitman on the dark web. Actually, most of it is banal knockoff Kanye sneakers.
Yes, which we could get just about 10 blocks from here as well.
Yeah, they probably made it all the way around through the dark web from Canal Street back to this particular venue. So there's a lot of resetting expectations about what living in the digital world is all about. But if I could say there's one theme throughout the exhibit, it's one of digital tracking. The Glass House name obviously refers to exposing lots of information to the world. And I feel like that's something that most American consumers, they sort of know it's happening, but they don't know how it really affects them. What are your opinions on are Americans aware enough about what their digital footprints are leaving behind?
So I think the answer is probably no. But what's interesting is I think they're quickly getting interested. Whether it's stories about what happens to their data, it's stories around NSA tracking, metadata on phones. I think the awareness of these social issues are starting to break through, and they're curious. I know this is a small sample size here at the Glass Room, but we've had anywhere from 500 to 700 people a day. Highs on the weekends, on a Saturday is around 1,000. That's a lot of interest in a small little gallery here in Nolita. So there's a hunger, there's a curiosity. Current events are probably driving that. But Pew just did some research just a little while ago, and they did find that 86% of Americans were taking some form of action to mask their digital footprint, and over 65% of responders thought it was very important to know who was getting their data and have some control over how they use that data. So I think we're seeing growing momentum on this, but is it too late is maybe one question. And what are we doing, whether it's Mozilla, the tech industry, education, media, to actually help people understand that and be informed, because it's going to take those kind of public education efforts to make these issues tangible.
I'm going to say this is late in the showroom's run. It's been open for a couple of weeks. It is the middle of the afternoon here. Most people should be at work, and there is somebody in front of every single exhibit in this room, and there have been for the last hour and a half since I've been here. So there's a lot of interest, and there's not a lot of signage. I mean, people are discovering it sort of organically. So there's definitely interest.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Tactical Tech did design it for having that storefront appeal, but we've been amazed if you just look around in here. I mean, it doesn't feel that different from an Apple store where you're waiting for your Genius Bar or looking to play with the newest device. It has that kind of energy, both from the design and also the way that people are using it. I don't know where these people are supposed to be at work on the afternoon, and so we'll see. This is actually an extra week. We were actually supposed to close just a few days ago, so we extended it this week. And we knew probably 2 weeks was always not enough, but you also don't know how it's going to be received. We had an idea on our opening night party where on a rainy Monday or Tuesday night, where we had a line around the block and down the corner that never seemed to slow down throughout the entire party. There's definitely something in the air that makes people more attuned to these issues.
So you work for Mozilla. I imagine you use Firefox.
Yes.
What other tools do you use personally to sort of protect your personal data? Where on the spectrum do you fall in terms of paranoia?
Well, I'm not, I'm kind of famously not very tinfoil hat. In fact, sometimes I think that makes me a little bit more similar and empathetic to the folks that we're trying to educate and work with, because, I do come from like this magical world of delights around technology that's connected us to people, that entertains us, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like I understand that conversation. But what I have done personally is, and I think what most of us can start doing tomorrow, and whether that's in Firefox or in another browser, is most of these tools have privacy and security settings that most people don't even know exist, or how to use them, or how to set them. So first thing I do is just make sure that the things that I do use on a regular basis, I've set those things how I want them to be. Mozilla does have a new product for the mobile phone we call Firefox Focus, which I think is a really neat little innovation in that it's one button click to dump all of your browsing history. And then just kind of wipe it away. It almost gamifies it a little bit. So you've gone through a string of browsing, you can just, boom, hit delete. It feels empowering, right? There's something about that one button click that gives us a little bit of power over
I don't know
device.
why we haven't, well, I actually know exactly why we haven't seen it before. And we haven't seen it before because it's in the financial interest of browser manufacturers to use that information and that ability to supply to advertisers in order to make money. So that's why we haven't seen it before. But and most people know that there's a way to clear your browser history, and then you should also clear your cache. But it would be very easy for Microsoft or Google to offer the same feature, but they won't because there's a financial incentive not to do so.
And we do think that's what differentiates Mozilla, and that we don't have those fiscal motivators to do those things. We are concerned about a healthy and open internet. We do think about user rights. Those things are central to our values as an organization, and so maybe we have the affordances to put those kind of tools in, but it also means that we should be the ones that should be and be more proactive, even sometimes than we have been in the past.
So on the flip side, you allude to this, that all of this information is helping vendors create a better digital experience for us. The reason Facebook is so addictive is because it's constantly adjusting to our needs. The reason our search results are so great is because Google knows exactly what we're searching for and what everybody else is searching for, and is delivering really good results. I work in the media industry. If everybody starts using ad blocker and ghostery, I'm going to have a hard time paying my writers to create new and original content. Like, how far is too far? And how do you feel about ad blockers in particular?
Those are all great questions. Here's, I think it's a balance, right? Obviously, and I think as a digital society and the laws and policies that govern that, we're going to have to find an equilibrium, because Mozilla is in no way wants to stand in front of content holder and publisher rights to make money off the content that they want to make. But we also have to be conscious and think of it as an ecosystem where both are benefiting if people are having such horrible online experiences that they just start leaving online in general because the experience is so bad. So what is that equilibrium there? I think that's got to be a conversation. It's why things like the Glassroom are so important, because it's not heavily didactic. It's not saying you should do this. It's saying what are the implications of our choices, and then how do we enter a conversation to come up with what the new normal might be. I don't think we've had these kind of conversations about the new normal in any kind of way, and this kind of protectionism, whether it's the hyper-paranoid user rights or whether it is the content and holders' rights or the publisher rights, haven't really been able to engage in that conversation that's going to get to that equilibrium. So, when we see places like Forbes, and the Atlantic start to block content of people that have ad blockers, and so it's probably going to force these conversations, or else we'll, just be more segmenting ourselves into our own, where it's beyond the filter bubble almost. It's almost in our values bubble about what we'll interact with.
You've used the terminology about thinking about the health of the internet, the overall health of the web, and you see Mozilla as one of the stewards of that health, or at least telling people what a healthy system should look like, and help explore it. Can you just break down what makes a healthy internet, and what do you think those goals should be?
Sure. So we come from a place where we really believe that the internet is an open global public resource that's drastically democratized information flow, communication, bunch of other things, and that public resource, almost like how cities and states and governments protect green spaces, because they really are so important, and people bring their own needs into those spaces. So someone has to watch that and balance what that health is. That's why we like to talk about it in an ecosystem way, because where something might be very healthy, something else might be sick, and we have to understand that balance. So we really define it right now with 5 issues. And so those are privacy and security. So what's that like? The issues that Glassroom is looking at. 2 is centralization. Just like kind of in our media culture, the more we've had fewer and fewer media companies controlling everything, that's dangerous for the marketplace of ideas, for new thought, et cetera. So we can't let the web just centralize. And right now we see a lot of gatekeepers, maybe not about owning the whole web, but definitely your entry point into the web.
Yeah. And you're talking about Facebook.
Yes.
Largely.
Facebook.
It's become the news source for the vast majority of consumers. It is not the open web, and there's really not there's a diversity of opinion on Facebook, but there's not a diversity of opinion guaranteed in your Facebook feed.
Right. The algorithm, it definitely disrupts that. But it's not only just that sort of first world version of that, it's also their play in emerging markets where they want to be people's first touch of the internet, where then they don't necessarily even have a concept of these two things separated. Many of us probably opt in to Facebook's stream, so to speak, now, because of their algorithms, because of their design, because of the critical mass of users. But in these places where they might be coming onto the web for the first time, we certainly don't want them to have no understanding of the separation between Facebook and the web. So centralization is key.
And right now, their business model is to give Facebook away for free, and then if you want to get access to the rest of the web, then you're going to have to pay.
Yes.
And that's a complete flip of all of our experience here in the United States, anyway.
So it's really interesting to see how they play that out in places that where they're new and where the web is new. And then the other 3 that are really important to us is obviously open innovation. One of the things that gave this sort of web revolution, Web 2.0, whatever you want to call it, was that the platform was open and people knew how to build on top of it. And so it came from the edges. It gave us the Mark Zuckerberg and his 42 houses here. So we have to protect that open innovation system. And then all need to participate. So digital inclusion. It can't be a space for only certain people. And then maybe the thing that I'm most passionate about, and I think that undergirds a lot of what we're talking about, is web literacy. We're going to need web literate citizens who can make these choices with some level of education and sophistication. They may choose to opt in giving away their data, but they should understand that. And that's where web literacy looks at how you critically read the web, then how you understand it's a writable space. You can do stuff on it. It's not just read. And then really, probably most importantly, how people participate in the right ways.
What do you think are the biggest gaps? Let's just focus on Americans at this point. The biggest gaps in web literacy for Americans. What is it that a lot of people just don't understand, and that you think would make a big difference if they knew how it really worked?
Yeah, I think they don't know even just the basics of the browser. Kind of even seeing where the URL thread can go, or reading kind of just a level behind at the code. I'm not saying be deep in the nerd code, so to speak, but there are tells on something like fake news or what have you, or you can see, I'm going to reference Kanye's fake shoes again, right? Most of us, whether it's a pair of sneakers or a Gucci bag, we know how to look for the missing stitch, or we can, we may opt, again, to buy the knockoff handbag, but we have a sophistication about what to look for. I think that's just the structures and how the web works is at basic level just non-existent, so people can't actually say, oh, let me look at the resources. I've been thinking a lot, even just thinking about talking to you.
That's a really good example. That we're better at identifying fake Gucci bags than a fake news store.
Than a fake website.
And the tells are there.
Yes, they're all over the place. In fact, if you just have a few little bits of knowledge, you can kind of wipe away a lot of that mystery. So just a little bit of web literacy would kind of give all of our fake news sort of BS detectors a boost. We'd be much more sophisticated even just knowing a few simple things. So some of that is what we try to get out there. Go deeper, obviously, but what is that kind of quick knowledge that people then be able to impart? And then also, like anything else, a little bit of knowledge is usually a slippery slope to people wanting, a positive slippery slope to wanting to know more and become more curious.
Yeah, my thing that I always tell people is you have to understand when you agree to all those permissions on your Android phone, you're giving that software access to everything on your phone in a lot of cases. And no one ever looks at that screen, nobody really understands what it means, and then once you do it once, it's on your phone until you change your phone in. Like you're never gonna go back into your privacy settings. And I see, I do it myself. I just click through, it's a game, and I'm like, wait a minute, why does the game need to know my location? And it's because they can make money on advertising if they know my location.
Yeah.
And that's something that I still think people don't really realize. They know not to click on links and download virus-laden emails, but they don't understand the app threat.
Although, I don't know, as the news is telling us the last few days, even that gets dangerous. As you saw the pretty direct phishing scam that got through to the DNC's emails.
Yeah, basic phishing is still the most effective attack vector, and there doesn't need to be a grand explanation for how it gets there. It's usually just an email. It's usually millions of emails, and then a couple thousand people fall for it.
Right, some weird law of averages, yeah.
Yeah, and that's security behavior, but it's the same thing. That's a great example of digital literacy. So as part of Mozilla, we've got Chrome, which is a great browser. We've got Microsoft Edge, come a long way, come back from the bad dog days of Internet Explorer. Why do we need Firefox in addition to those? And Safari for Apple users?
Sure, and that's a good question. I think it's something I referenced a few minutes ago. One, because you know that there isn't an overt profit motive directing where Firefox goes. It's not a publicly held organization. It's the nonprofit actually owns the corporation. It's values and mission driven. So of course there is a corporation, and of course Firefox makes money, and it makes money on search deals with Google and Yahoo and others. So there is a business model, but that isn't the driving force of the organization. So it does, so as you said earlier, the idea to put a big fat, dump everything after a session of browsing is easy to do technically, right? It's not a difficult piece of software, but it is difficult to do if that is antithetical to your business model. And so we aren't driven by those motivators. And in fact, for us, having those features actually helps us to gain the kind of market share and users that make us still attractive to having the kind of search deals and things that we can make revenue on. So it actually is being better at those things and differentiating ourselves there that makes it more attractive to more people, especially as we talk about more and more people are interested in these issues. They're going to start looking for those kind of consumer choices. In some ways, it's not dissimilar to some of values-based consumer choices that we all make on a regular basis, whether that's the organic food movement or locavores, or people are making these kind of conscious choices on a regular basis. Why not on the digital tools they use? Mm-hmm.
So in terms of if somebody, obviously using Firefox, recommendation number one, what else can people do to sort of educate themselves to support you guys and sort of create a healthier internet?
So there's many things, and we're running a bunch of programs to start to look at that, both from sort of the surface things to deeper engagements. Doing these kind of things is important for us. So whether it's the Glass Room, or it's our Mozilla Festival that we do yearly in London, or some other conferences and convening events. So the more we bring people together and have them work and play together and then share, that sort of face-to-face people interaction, this is still hyper important. We also have a local organizing model, which we call Mozilla Clubs, which we've launched globally. It's where students, youth, educators, adults are coming together, and we're giving them the tools and the know-how and sometimes micro budgets to come together and do local organizing in their communities, whether that's down the street or in India or in Pakistan, all over Europe. Coming together, teaching themselves digital literacy, finding an audience and who wants to learn this stuff. And then third, we're doing large-scale public education campaigns. So we want to get much more public and loud about these issues and get them into the public consciousness. I mean, our goal really is to make this idea of internet health.
We're live on location.
One just broke. This idea of internet health, a top 10 social issue, just like clean water or recycling. I mean, we want that kind of recognition in the consciousness of citizens, of voters, of consumers. That really is our goal. And so these broad campaigns, whether it was last year we did it on encryption, we had a cute little web app game called Codemoji that basically let you play with ciphers and encryption and send your using emojis to send encrypted things to friends. So what are these kind of, sometimes I call it, what's our got milk for internet health?
Very cool. So if people want to know more information, how can they find you online? Or feel free to give them out your cell phone number if you want to.
Right.
But how can they get in touch with you?
Sure, I think probably, until Twitter's still around, right,
Yeah,
for a little while.
It is.
So at Chris Larry, like the two names, 33, is probably a great way. I'm on there pretty frequently, so that's a great way to connect with me, either by tweeting at me or direct messaging me there. I am happy to give out my email address, so it's clawrence@mozillafoundation.org. And we've got so many programs running here in New York City and then around the globe and ways to get involved. A lot of my work for Mozilla is actually activating people and getting people involved and doing stuff at that kind of deeper engagement level. So I'm happy to talk to anyone about how they might want to do that.
Very cool. It's a great exhibit. I've had a blast talking to you and looking around. Thanks for putting it on.
Thanks
for coming on the show. I appreciate it. This has been Chris Lawrence, Vice President of the Mozilla Leadership Network, and this has been Fast Forward. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back with a new show very, very soon. I'll see you in the future.